Hey guys, Mark Taylor, aka Lord Hammer from GuildUmbra.com, and I'm here with the first cast for the Dragon Chasers. Obviously, this is going to be distributed through Game Skinny from the Launch Media Network, and I have to my right side, or your left, Justin Lowe, aka Sato. What's going on, man?
Not much. Same old, really. Just kind of plugging away on stuff. That's pretty much it, yeah. I don't have anything to announce yet, but yeah, that's
Oh,
pretty much it.
and then we've got Brian, whose face is all crushing the the screen. Lean back a little bit, dude. There you go. Perfect. What's going on, Roth?
Nothing much. Just ready to get this cast over with. No, I'm just kidding. We're gonna have some fun.
So, real quick, tell us what you got going on nowadays over at Game Skinny.
Well, I've been doing a lot more coding over for Gamer Launch. Actually, I've been building an add-on for World of Warcraft and doing some API stuff with Smite and I guess in Game Skinny. We just got some Heroes of the Storm keys. We're gonna be giving those away soon. And yeah, that's about it.
Pretty cool. Justin, what have you been up to since your last big casting days with the Republic?
Not much. I mean, I kind of been doing stuff, it seems like every month or so. I'm announcing something new. But right now, I'm just kind of in the planning phase on something right now. But looking forward to talking about that soon. Just right now, just looking forward to doing something soon. But right now, I'm just trying to relax a little bit and, take care of my back. And that's pretty much it.
So, folks who probably know Justin through, I guess the gamer community, the podcast, the fan media, the nerd media, whatever you want to call it, you might want to reach out if you're interested in potentially getting involved in one of the next big things. But I guess the main part or the reason why we put this together is, everyone's heard the term chasing the dragon. So we're chasing that next great gaming experience because it seems like so many things have come out over the past few years that have either hit, missed, or just kind of not fully satisfied. So what we're going to do is try to look at what are the games that are kind of coming out and try to track them, obsess over them, maybe speculate, theory craft, but then also let's have a realistic veteran level discussion, for people who've played a lot of these different games and try to actually see is there something that's really going to come out that's going to fulfill that need? So right now, the real big new game that a lot of fan sites or old veterans of the fan site media have gotten into is Crowfall because it's got the usual suspects. And so we're starting to check that now. So Justin, do you want to tell us what is Crowfall and what are the facts about it?
Crowfall is, well, what they want it to be is basically kind of a continuation of what Shadowbane was all about. It's kind of like a hardcore PvP element, with some mix of PvE thrown in on the different worlds and archetypes. And basically, the whole idea about the game, at least the big idea, is that you'd have them kind of the players would be persistent, but the worlds themselves would be all kind of chaotic, and they would have like this Hunger Week, which essentially is like kind of like taking Shadowbane's systems, but throwing it on its head, where you have like weeks where they would, basically all the monsters would change. They would go through drastic changes, and it would become harder over the weeks to actually do anything inside of these worlds. So it makes it harder for you to actually do conquests, and you basically take over towers and cities and found big, huge outposts and also like big keeps. So it's kind of like this overworld, kind of like same sort of systems as Shadowbane, but with a new twist, trying to make it a little bit more interesting for people who are maybe new to MMOs, with a little bit more flair than what they're used to.
So do you guys know who's really kind of behind this?
Yeah, Gordon Walton and Todd Coleman. Todd Coleman being the one that was kind of one of the principals on Shadowbane, and also Gordon Walton, responsible for games like Ultima, and then also, Shadow Star Wars: The Republic, which is one of the games I covered for years. So both of them are kind of like the leads on the game. We had heard I think like a year ago or 2 years ago actually, that they were starting to talk about stuff behind the scenes, and things were stealthy after Gordon left SWTOR. But then we finally got, a kind of key, like an eye on what they were doing, which was that they basically got some funding like last year to kind of start working on this stuff. And that funding wasn't really a lot. So there was that initial talk about like what they were going to do with Kickstarter and all that stuff. That stuff has come up a little bit more as of late, but those are the two real principles of the game, and kind of give you a good idea of what to expect about how the game would be structured and how it would go along.
So, Roth, based on what we've seen from the website, which over the past week it looks like it's doubled in content, is this the same old? Is this the something that we've seen before, or is there anything new to this game that we just kind of haven't seen before?
Um, so I don't think I've ever seen an MMO that kind of aimed to base its entire game off of the idea of PvP. I guess the closest thing I can think of is Eve, but that's just a completely separate type of fantasy, space and everything.
Well, that's
Um,
definitely a PvP game. I mean, heck,
yeah,
they've even got forum PvP.
but
So
so what I'm a little bit worried about is I assume most of us have played WoW. So there's Alterac Valley in WoW, and that is sort of what I'm afraid it will be like,
in what way?
where
Can you explain that?
it's it's 40 on 40, and the horde is terrible at it. They don't. It's 40 people just going at it, and nobody coordinates, nobody cares. Everybody just runs to the end and loses. That's just what happens. So I really
Zero
hope
play.
that, like, yeah, I mean, it would require the gameplay that they're talking about would require passion and caring from the players, and I just I'm afraid that it won't be like that. Um, it'll
Yeah.
require community coordination.
And to
So
that point, there are three factions. There's the Order, the Chaos, and then Balance. And each one of them are different factions. So I assume those factions will come into play for some of the world stuff. Some of them are FFA, and like they don't regard like any of the faction stuff for some of the worlds. And when we say worlds, they're technically MMO worlds, but they always will change over time. And it'll be interesting to see how many people actually keep with it with the factions when it gets like years into the game, and whether or not one faction will dominate over the other. But I think that three factions might actually stave off a little bit of that, that we've seen in other MMOs.
I personally think that having three factions is the life's blood of any type of game or MMO rather, that has PvP as its core element. Just because, like Roth was saying, if it's left or right, or heck, even if you look at our own political system in this country, if things become so polarized that it just ends up being these radical shifts, radically left, radically right, or radically horde, or radically, alliance. You know what I mean? There never seems to be either a stalemate, or even if you do get to a stalemate, that's not even good, right? So the fact that you have a third faction in there can shake things up, and I don't think choice is probably the right word to use, but at least it breaks the monotony, because you can get into servers where it becomes class lock or server lock relative to a class, right? So it's either one is dominating over the other, so then the one population dwindles over time, and people start moving to other servers where they think that they're going to be the dominant server or the dominant faction. I mean, does that make sense, or am I just kind of
Yeah.
rambling there?
They talked about that actually recently this week. There's a big thing about this Hunger Week that they had going on. Basically, the worlds will constantly change and kind of shift the balance. What they had a problem with in Shadowbane, which was what my problem was when I first experienced Shadowbane, which is that like everybody kind of was already established, and you had like a couple factions that were basically just dominating the entire thing, and nobody who was any new could actually start and be able to actually do anything in the game. In fact, I remember like my first starting in Shadowbane, I got killed immediately. Like spawning into the world, I got killed immediately. Like I was immediately corpse camped as I just started my character. That's kind of the kind of hardcore nature that was for Shadowbane. But they're trying to avoid that this time by interjecting these worlds that are constantly changing. They'll maybe last a couple of weeks, a year, and then the entire landscape will change. It will reset the worlds and basically reset control of them. they kind of pitched it as like a strategy element of the game. They said that that was what Shadowbane was supposed to be, but it became too dominant on certain aspects and just onerous on people actually starting the game. So I'm actually kind of interested in that, specifically that element, that they're going to be resetting these stuff constantly, which may actually limit a lot of that. So here's to hoping.
I did see that they were talking about doing a where they'll lock you to a world if you go to a campaign. You're not going to be able to leave and go to a different campaign. But they also said that they haven't decided on that yet. They might flip flop, might do multiples.
Right. Yeah, and some of them you can't even, from one of the certain, like a few of the images that they've released so far of the world. Some of them you can't even bring items in. You can't bring equipment in. You basically start naked in certain one of these worlds, and some of them will last a week. Some of them will last a year. Some of them will last a month. And just variable times. But once you do that, yeah, sometimes you are locked in.
So let me ask the question, I guess, in a different way. Like, what is going to be a differentiator about this MMO versus everything else? Because at face value, and I'm purposely staying a little bit ignorant so that I can, I guess, ask these questions and not just know the answer to everything I'm asking. Like, at face value, it looks like sword and sorcery, So I wouldn't say a WoW clone, but just that genre clone, right? Which tends to be 80% of the MMO market. What based on what you've seen with the really limited information out there, and obviously we're not going to talk about everything in this cast, otherwise we'd run out of content before we run out of cast. So what looks at least different about this that would make you want to play this game, or even think that it's just not going to be a clone of something else? Justin?
For me, it's just going back to that hardcore PvP play style. When you lose, you lose, and when you win, you win, and you take a lot of risks to get there and reap the rewards. That's something that has kind of over time been lost in MMOs. They kind of made that those like rough edges that people experience, a little bit more polished and make it a little bit easier for you to get in the game. So basically they make that entry level play a lot more easy to get into. So my focus is that I really want to get back into like a PvP MMO, and this is the first one that in a long time where it's felt like it's actually considering a lot of those elements. The devs are talking about it in the right ways. At least so far, everything seems like they're pointing in the right direction for me and my personal type of play.
All right. So, Roth, I'll ask you the hard question that we're going to ask all the games, every week. Is it going to fail? Based on what we know, is there something that we see here that's just going to make this game fail?
So, I think it has a high risk because of how dependent it's going to be on the community. So if there's not that initial burst of passionate players that stick around and figure this game out, it's going to have a really hard time. But then also it could be like Eve, where it takes 10 years for it to get to 500,000 subscribers. But so it all depends on the community. It all depends on how the game is played when it comes out and how well the devs react and adjust it to make it fun. Because it's just not going to be fun if it's unbalanced and every campaign lasts 2 hours and one guild walks in and just wrecks the whole place. Like if it's just like that all the time, I don't see it lasting very long. But they can make it work.
Okay. Well, cool. So at this point in time, we'll give a little shout out to our sponsors. All right. So coming back, now we're going to talk about Star Citizen, which is not new. It's been out for two, maybe almost 3 years in terms of people knowing about it and backing it. And, it's basically like if you talk to the developers, and I've actually spoken to Chris Roberts, it's not an MMORPG. It is a massively online game. So I guess it's a MMO, but not an MMORPG. Definitely. It's, he'll be the first person to say it's a flight sim, but because they've gotten so much money through the Kickstarter, they're going to keep adding and adding and adding and adding to it. So I guess what we want to talk about here on the show in terms of Star Citizen is at least try to figure out if there's a hype train, if we can get on the hype train, if we can help hype hype this thing and put it on the train. It's definitely a game that I'm into it for like $400-500. My guild's into it for about 20 grand. We've got like 7 or 8 constellations. We've got more dogfighters than Battlestar Galactica. So, I mean, 2 years ago we backed it pretty hard, and we're still kind of waiting. So, Justin, let me ask you, what is at this point in time your speculation on where they are in terms of development relative to, like, do they have a game, a product to play, or what?
Last time I revisited was like 3 weeks ago, and they had put in the races and all that stuff. Like the public matchmaking for that stuff, and a few other items. But the game hasn't really changed very much, at least from when I first got into like the wing commander mode or whatever
Arena Commander.
Arena Commander. Sorry.
Yep.
And from that end, it's a little it's waned for me. Because of the fact that it hasn't kind of had these big bursts of improvements. Yes, they're talking a lot about a lot of great stuff, but I'm still sort of skeptical. And on that, like the persistent universe stuff, the fact that they keep backtracking on that stuff actually makes me more skeptical, because of the fact that was one of those things that they had like talked up a lot when they first started. So I'm wondering if the persistent universe is not going to be as necessarily fleshed out as it would have been. Because I remember like one of those first like videos that they showed, they had a big like trade routes and how it would be affected based on like what you actually had like sold in certain routes, and if like trade ships got blown up along the way, it might raise the cost of stuff elsewhere. So the fact that stuff was talked about so early kind of got me really, really, really psyched about it. The fact that I could be a pirate, or a bounty hunter, and kind of affecting those the overall economy was one of the big things that I was really hyped about. But for me, right now, I'm sort of in wait and see mode. I call it like the money spinning simulator right now, because it totally is true. I spent like $200 on it myself, and I'm waiting for it. I'm excited. I'm cautiously optimistic is where I would be right now. But it has a lot to prove for me right now.
So, Roth, what are your thoughts? The fact that they've now actually got a full-blown development group working on an FPS portion of the game, and what I mean is they've got multiple studios working on multiple parts. They've said that they're not going to release the whole thing at once so that it could come crashing down. They're going to release it in modules, in parts, which I think is a great idea. If nothing else, it gives you content to look forward to over time. But like they have a FPS team working on an FPS. I don't even know mini game or part of the game, but it seems like we don't even have the game out. So what are your thoughts of that?
So it's part of my worry for the game is that I mean, how many different systems do they have now in the game? Like 50. Like there's the flight, there's the SPS, there's just so many things that they're adding to this game, and they continue to add more with all the crowdfunding.
Which is great. They've had great success with the crowdfunding.
But so my thought is it's going to be 2028 before they put all this together, stitch it all together in one game. Like right now, it feels like they're just designing 50 games, and then maybe one day they'll all kind of coalesce into one big game, which would be, I can see the potential with there's so many cool things that they want to do, but it just doesn't look like they'll be able to put it all together for another, many, many years, even with as large of a development team as they have. So I'm a little worried about, how long it's going to take them.
Have they published anywhere when they think the initial first part of the game is going to launch? I thought I had read 2016, but am I just full of crap, or has that been posted anywhere?
All I've seen is just where they do the, we're going to release the FPS module around this time frame. We're going to release this piece of the game around this time frame. That's all I've seen. I haven't actually seen here's the complete game that we expect to have complete.
Yeah, and to that point, they have in the past missed their their launch schedules for certain modules. This is one of the reasons why, as of late, they've been kind of like making sure that they're not like giving people finite dates in which it'll be released, like modules will be released again in Windows, as to what the hope for. So yeah, it's hard to know when Star Citizen will be complete.
All right. So then let me ask, given, the MMORPG or MMO space is just a very hard space to compete in. There's so many products that are coming out, and there's so many that, air quotes, just don't make it, and, in 2015, you have to take that with a grain of salt because everyone's trying to compare themselves to WoW. So if you haven't hit WoW numbers, then you're not a success. And clearly that's not true, because, Star Wars Galaxy seems to, or not Galaxies, Star Wars The Old Republic seems to be doing, fairly well, especially when they came up with their free to play cash market model. Whether you like it or not, it seems that it's doing well. And Eve has just grown over the past 10 years. I remember back in the day, if you had 200,000 subscribers, back in the EverQuest days, that was like you had ridiculous numbers. So I guess where I'm going, because that is rambling, can a dogfighting simulator, a space sim, compete in the MMO space today, given the way we've been playing MMOs for the last 10, 15, 20 years? Anybody?
Maybe not in the MMO space, just because of the fact that it takes so much preparation on the user to like get flight sticks and be heavily invested in the game. Obviously, you can play those games with a mouse and keyboard, but it's not necessarily the best way to play it. So on that end, yeah, it can be a little intimidating. And even from like a communication standpoint and making sure that people understand that they're able to play it, without that kind of setup, it's something that, has to be constantly reiterated. So on that end, I think the barrier to entry may be a little bit higher than, quite a bit higher than like an MMO, a traditional MMO. So I'm not sure. And as far as like flight sim stuff, I mean, people have been looking for that for so long. It's an area that hasn't been fed, so to speak. So on that end, I think that they can actually take a lot of people and get a lot of people in that maybe haven't been looking forward to like other MMOs. So I think they have maybe a bigger audience to pull from than a traditional MMO that might be coming out, because those people are served by World of Warcraft, but in flight sims, they're not really served by much else.
That's an interesting point. So basically, you're saying they will probably get numbers, but they're not necessarily going to be carving MMORPG numbers out of existing games. They probably won't cannibalize those. They'll probably bring up or add to the gaming space from people who've not been serviced in a long time, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. And we've seen it on the forums, and there was a lot of people that were talking about like this being their first like technically massively multiplayer online game, so that they were jumping in for the first time and were excited to get to the chance to experience that, or people building entirely new setups that didn't have that stuff before. So I'm excited to see how it turns out, but I'm skeptically optimistic.
All right.
The only way I could see it becoming really MMO is if they actually stitch all of this together, where you have a persistent character in a universe that's, you can go from one side of the universe to the other. Until they get to that point, it's really not an MMO. I guess, it's kind of hard to call it one.
So it's got MMO pieces, right? Because they're going to give you the ability to play on your own server. Why you would want to do that, I'm not really sure. But then you have the ability to take your tune or whatever and then connect to or through the persistent world or a persistent world. And I don't know if there's going to be one singular giant persistent world or if it's going to be many, persistent worlds, which would be synonymous with like servers, like on a traditional MMO, I'm on this server or that server, blah, blah, blah. Because it's in the persistent world that you would then fight over specific assets like, the Bengal carrier or what have you, right?
And that's my big problem with Star Citizen and also Elite Dangerous. I think the one thing that Elite Dangerous is really the big fatal flaw with Elite Dangerous and also potentially Star Citizen is the fact that we don't know what kind of encouragement they're going to give to players to play on the persistent world. And right now, especially with Elite Dangerous, the problem that it's having currently is it's not giving people a real reason to get on the open play, which is like their persistent universe. So people are choosing to play on the solo experience and just play alone, and it's basically allowing them to get all the normal stuff that they would be able to get through the online experience, but in a solo experience where they don't have to worry about being pirated. There's no risk involved for them. You know, the AI pretty much is stupid enough to give you way too big of a chance if you are intercepted by pirates. So on that end, I worry that there really has to be an advantage for people to connect to the persistent world and be in open play. There has to be like bonuses to like how much income you actually get for kills or something like that. Because right now, especially on Elite Dangerous, it's showing the reason why this system will fail and fail pretty large.
Wow. Well, on that note, we'll take it to the lounge as we hit our final discussions. So, yeah, we are veteran, gamers, and we are chasing that next great gaming experience. So, what do you think that the MMO space, the gaming space, needs to happen for it to grow? Because I am afraid that the MMO RPG, the standard online game, is going to contract because there have been so many failures or disappointments from a financial standpoint that I'm actually very kind of worried that in 5-10 years there won't be good MMOs to play because backers and people who financially invest in these things are getting burned too often. Is that an unrealistic fear? Am I just stressing myself out?
I'm gonna give you here's the good word. Warlords of Draenor came out.
Yeah, I mean, so
Yeah.
so without trying to bust on WoW, because clearly WoW is a dominant force, But
I-
I'm just wondering, like, is there something that can be successful in the space other than a WoW, right?
I would say, like, what do you consider a failure? Because I'm not covering SWTOR anymore, but as far as SWTOR numbers are concerned and the way the investor calls seem to point that the free to play stuff is actually working out extremely well for them, and has for since they first launched it. So it all depends on what your expectation of failure is for hardcore MMO players. I probably would say, for the most part, it was a failure, and there have been a lot of failures as of late. So for our hardcore MMO fans, I don't know if there's necessarily like a good option out there right now. Who knows about it growing? I think that will happen over time, just based on whether or not Blizzard or other big names actually bring that to the space. Because the one thing that BioWare did do with SWTOR is initially got like a bunch of people interested because of the fact that it's BioWare making a freaking MMO.
Right.
So it just takes like a big idea. I think to bring people back in and get people interested again.
Okay. So that being said, right now, on February 8th of 2015, Roth, what is the dragon that you're chasing? What experience are you trying to have reignited? Or, well, I know you still play WoW, so maybe you're not needing to chase a dragon.
So of course the news is I was just promoted to the main tank of our Mythic team. So that was the dragon I have been chasing for a long, long time, ever since Burning Crusade. But yeah, so I think the thing about it that I've always been chasing is the camaraderie of like finding a group of 20, 30 people that I can get to know every day over a course of a long time. We work together. We start, like our cooldown rotations. We've got that all set up. We all play off of each other almost without having to talk. Like, that's the kind of thing I've been chasing. And it's like it gets my adrenaline going when we have like half the group dead and the boss is at 2%. Like, it's just, I love it. Love it. That's what that's why I've been playing MMOs for, 15 years now.
Justin, what's the dragon you're chasing?
Right now I've been playing a bunch of Elite Dangerous, and that has consumed most of my free time. So I've been playing a lot of that. Have been kind of getting to the point where I don't know if I'm necessarily going to be playing it for much longer, just because of the reasons why I mentioned before. But right now I'm kind of just following Crowfall. I think that's going to be the most interesting MMO for me going forward for about a year. So I'll be watching that and playing, Star Citizen and Elite Dangerous as we get to that point. And sorry about my voice, I'm sick. So yeah, there you go.
That's cool. I mean, I guess for me personally, the dragon that I'm chasing is any game that I can really get to the end game with my guild, and kind of do the stuff that you're doing now, Roth. I thought that it was going to be that in WildStar, which I really, really liked that game. But I have to come to the reality, and I guess the sad realization that I thought I was hardcore until I played that game. I thought I was elite until I played that game. That game's end game punished me and basically told me that I'm not as hardcore as I thought I always thought I was. I mean, I couldn't. I guess I either A, was not good enough, or my group was just not good enough to make it to the raids, and it just made it such a long and protracted, painful experience that, quite frankly, I just stopped. I was like, this is just not fun anymore. It just became a job. So I don't want to poo-poo the game, because I think the game is great. I just think that maybe the problem with it is that I think the developers made a game that they wanted to play, and what they didn't understand was that if you make a game like so punishing that your casuals, which I guess that's what I am, they're just not going to play anymore. There was only like 5 or 6 or 7 groups that I ever could track that were actually rating. So, the bottom line is like either A, I wasn't good enough, or my guild wasn't good enough, or my group wasn't good enough to get to the end game. And, I've never had that happen in any other game. And so I'm hoping to, break out the band, put the band back together, and either go through Crowfall or Star Citizen or something to get that, that camaraderie back that you were talking about, Roth. So that's the dragon I'm kind of chasing. Oh, well.
There is one thing that I forgot to mention was, for whatever reason, the art style of World of Warcraft, it's by far my favorite, and Crowfall seems to be going for like the cross between like really cartoony and almost realistic, and I really love that art style, and I think that is one thing that could keep me in Crowfall, is just the art style. It looks great. I love it.
That's cool. Well, all right, Justin, give us your information so people can get in contact with you for the next thing you're putting together.
Just follow me at Zirak on Twitter, and that's pretty much it. Zirak.
Roth, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Rothalak, and then also at GameSkinny. If you just search Rothalak. If you Google Rothalak, that's all me. There you go.
Nice. All right, folks. I'm Mark Taylor, a.k.a. Lord Hammer from GuildArmor.com. We're distributing this through GameSkinny, and this has been sponsored by Launch Media. Take care.
Are we offline? Yay. Oh.